This conference will now be recorded.
We're good to go? Okay. I've got 9:32. We'll call this regular meeting of the Killeen-Temple Transportation and Planning Policy Board to order at this time. The next item on the agenda is the opportunity for public comment. Do we have anyone in person that would like to address the board today? Seeing there none, is there anyone online that would like to address the board?
Several members online, but nobody's indicated they would like to address the board.
Okay, very good. Then we'll move on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is the staff updates. I'll pass that off to you, Ryan.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Judge. As you'll see in your packet and on the screen of the upcoming K-Tempo meetings, those are all at 9:30 here at the SITCOG offices, except for the Freight Advisory Committee, which will be held at 2:30 p.m. Some other updates. The Bell County Thoroughfare Plan was passed by the Commissioners Court Monday, so that plan is done. The UPWP will be speaking on later. The Texas DEMP program is a grant program to fund the repowerment or replacement of vehicles with electric models. Staff have sent stuff out on that. And we'll send additional information out in our follow-up email. Another update is TransPod. Last month I spoke about the high-speed rail and the North Central Texas Council of Governments moving forward possibly with a feasibility study to do a Hyperloop type system from Fort Worth to Laredo. We are right in the center of that. So some of you may recall a couple years ago, we were involved in just a general high-speed rail study. There is a company that's trying to move forward with some of that. They're called TransPod. We have confirmed that they are able to present at the August Policy Board meeting. So they'll be presenting, as well as the North Central Texas Council of Governments, on this program since they spearheaded the initiative when it kicked off. So that'll be happening at the Policy Board meeting in August. Last Thursday and Friday, I was in El Paso for the state MPO meeting. There was multiple conversations on multiple good topics. One topic pertaining to funding especially was the $50,000 that MPOs were going to be given for safety planning activities. I believe I might have referenced this a year or so ago. That's how long it's taken to move forward with this. Originally, we thought these funds were going to be able to be used for match for our Safe Streets and Roads for All program, but they are not able to be used for match because they're also federal dollars. At the meeting, I did have some offline conversations with TxDOT to see if there were any way possible for at least our MPO to utilize the $50,000 from this allocation as our match, if they would possibly look at getting the $50,000 for K-Tempo from state funds so we could do that. The reason being, they're giving all the MPOs $50,000 to do safety planning activities. We've been awarded $1.8 million for a comprehensive safety action plan. Any of the monies that we would use the $50,000, any of the activities we would use the $50,000 on should be covered under the comprehensive safety action plan planning. So we would be double dipping or whatever you want to call it. And it just doesn't line up to me. So they're going to have some conversations at the state and see if, because we have such a large award, that they'll be able to make that concession to use that $50,000 from state funds, not federal. Where it got tricky is there were multiple MPOs that were awarded Safe Streets and Roads for All grants, but their grants were $150,000. So the state was thinking they could just use these federal funds to put on top of that. With a $1.8 million grant, $50,000 on top doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So those conversations are ongoing. I'm waiting to hear back from them on that. Something that's not really transportation specific is broadband I wanted to touch on. There are two programs that are out, one's for $3 billion, one's for $130 million. The state is currently drafting plans for disbursement and allocation of funds through grant programs. SITCOG is part of a broadband development office through the Comptroller Regional Working Group that consists of SITCOG, Brazos Valley COG, and Heart of Texas Council of Governments. And they are having public meetings. The first meeting will be held Monday in Bryan. And then the second public meeting for our region will be next Friday from 3 to 5 here at the COG. I'm sharing this because it is a public meeting. If you haven't seen information from staff, please let me know. We're trying to get this message out so we can get as many community members into this meeting as we can so they can provide input for the state's plan so that we're taken into account when their planning activities are happening. The last update I have is the air quality readings, and they were 67 and 60 parts per billion. Any questions?
I do have a brief question on the Hyperloop for next month, just in anticipation of that. The company that's going to come and present, have they been chosen for something, or is this in anticipating applying for something, or exactly how did they fit in?
So they reached out to the North Central Texas Council of Governments,
Right,
and actually requested a certification / test track. North Central Texas kind of opened up that conversation for all NPOs that were part of that process. There are no federal dollars awarded. My understanding is this is a private initiative that they're looking to fund
well, that was real, that
themselves.
answers
They will be remote, just out of transparency, they're in Spain. But the North Central Texas COG folks will be here in person to assist with answering any questions on that project.
the question. Thanks.
How long do you think that meeting is going to be?
The presentation, we've said 20 to 30 minutes, and then I anticipate there'll probably be 15 to 20 minutes of questions, follow up. And then, of course, we have direct communication with them. If anybody has to leave, they can reach out to us. We can send any correspondence. Any other questions?
Would it be possible, there was a presentation on the high-speed rail study, the feasibility study, about 2 years ago, I believe. Do we have that? Could we forward that to the policy board?
Yeah.
They would kind of give you a little bit of historical background before they're presenting, so you can see how this has evolved. Those of you that weren't at that presentation previously.
And we do that, yeah.
For me, the operable word, which I was not clear on, was that it's a private initiative at this point.
Correct. But we'll get that sent out and follow up, Judge. Okay. Oh, sorry. Take it back. The last thing I have is K-Tempo officer elections will happen in September for the new officers to come in October. If you're interested in serving as the chair or vice chair, please let me know. That's really all.
Okay. Anything else on updates?
Nothing else.
Okay. All right, very good. Moving on to item number 4, which is an action item regarding the approval of minutes from the June 21st, 2023 meeting. If you'll note that those are pages 12 through 15 in your packet. I'll open the floor to discussion or possible motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
We've got a motion to approve the minutes and a second. Any further discussion on item number 4? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Item number 5 is a discussion item regarding the MTP update timeline, which were pages 18 through 23 in your packet. I'll turn that over to James.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, everybody. We shared update timeline, I think 2 or 3 months ago. The timeline itself has not changed, but I just wanted to share what staff has been working on the past few months on preparing for the upcoming call for projects, which we still anticipate to open on September 1st and be open for about 6 weeks through the middle of October. Staff has a revised project application form, just tweaking it to make it a little more clear, hopefully for this time. That draft application is included in your packet. If you have comments or suggestions, we did share this with TAC for their feedback, but if anyone on the board has some, we're welcome those, and we'll bring this next meeting for final approval. Also on that, we have met 2 times with the project scoring work group, and there's another item later, so I'll update some more on that. There are some proposed changes to the project scoring criteria. And then we've been working on updating the major activity centers list, mostly trying to make sure we're including all of the current schools and proposed schools for the next 5 years, because that's important for planning purposes to know what's coming down the line. And the last thing is there's been some previous issues with phasing projects and how that works. If an application is submitted for one longer road and it's chopped up into smaller pieces, how do those phases continue on in our FDP? How are they scored? Things like that. So staff is working on a memorandum to kind of clarify that process. And, the proposed schedule is in your packet, also on the screen. If anyone has questions, happy to answer those.
Questions for James or comments, discussion? Gosh, James, you're just so thorough. You covered everything for us. Or if there, if there are no comments or questions, this was for discussion only. We'll move on to item number 6 on the agenda, which is a discussion and action item regarding the approval of the amendments to the FY 23-26 Transportation Improvement Program TIP and the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan MTP for the projects that are listed. And those were pages 26 through 43 of your packet. And again, I will turn that over to James.
Thanks, Judge. We brought this, or bringing this back for approval. All of these amendments were shared at the last meeting to start public involvement. There is quite a few. And I'll just run through them really quickly. The 13th Avenue Sidewalks projects, we're reallocating some funding from the local funding or local contribution to our Category 9 funding, which will increase the share the MPO is covering by about $92,000. This Troy West Main Street project, after additional conversations with TxDOT, we thought we needed to move the project to 2024, but it is on track to let next month. And there was some issue with the CRISA funding and how it was programmed. And instead of jeopardizing that let date, the state has advised us to keep the project as is, since it's currently approved in all of our systems, and we can clarify any changes after the project has let. So staff is recommending to not approve this amendment of all of the amendments. Chaparral Road, the proposed amendment would be to move the let date to back 1 year to FY 2026. Salado Royal Street Improvement Project, Village of Salado has requested an increase of about $1 million in funding and move the let date back to 2024. So those would be the changes. The Georgetown Railroad Phase 1. This is one of several that we are switching to the new carbon reduction funding. Those projects were all approved back in April. This project's a little special in that it currently has 3 different funding sources. To consolidate all those, we put it through the regular amendment process, even though normally a change in funding category is just an administrative amendment. The Copper's Cove bypass, there's been some increases to the category 2 and category funding, as you'll see on the screen here, and those are due to inflation costs for this project. And then lastly, we have one new old project, the Loop 363 overpass, which was previously in our FY21 to 24 TIP. That project was removed for some fiscal constraint issues a few years ago, and we're adding it back in with a let date of 2025. It's an $86 million project to add interchanges and widen Loop 363 between Lucius McKelvey and Industrial Boulevard. And then the last one is the Hill Country Transit District Micro Transit Technology, provide some funds for capital expenditures as they transition towards new service. This one will also be funded with the new carbon reduction funding. This summary is included in your packet. It just shows the proposed changes between the currently approved and the newly approved. There's a large increase in carbon reduction funding because we're moving projects over for the first time, and then the category 2 funding also is changing due to those inflation increases in the new Loop 363 project. Here is the schedule. TAC did recommend approval of all the amendments at their meeting on July 12th. That was before we had those final conversations with the state about the Troy project. So again, staff is recommending approval of all amendments except for D4501, West Main Street, Luther Curtis Road. And happy to answer any questions. Yes.
Obviously, Chaparral, what's the reason for pushing it to 2020, changing it to 2023?
When they're looking at the developing it, and this is Mr. Zaggers recommended that the 2026 date is a little bit more defensible in terms of what is probably more likely to happen than 2025. So it looks, yeah, that's why.
Okay, thanks. And that isn't stop.
No.
Thanks.
Any questions for James or the staff? Yes.
No question. I was ready to do a motion.
Oh, well.
Got a question on the item number 2 for the amendments. You said they recommended do not approve. So when you make a motion on this, is it going to be just for all passed without, except for the second one?
As it's listed in the packet, I think an appropriate motion would be to approve the amendments A through H minus and not approve B.
Staff recommendation.
Yes, based off staff recommendations. But the specific item that staff is asking you to not recommend is project Delta 45-01, which is identified as B in the listing.
I make a motion that we approve all items sans D4501.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve minus D4501 and a second over here. I believe Mr. Heplock got that in. Any further discussion on item number 6? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you very much. Item number 7 on the agenda, again, is a discussion and action item regarding the draft FY 2024-2025 Unified Planning Work Program, UPWP, which was page 46 in your packet. I'll turn that over to Ryan and James.
All right, I'll kick this off and then I'll let James take over. This is our internal budgetary document. We have been working on this even up until this morning. So what we have printed out over there as you come in is not what was sent out with the packet. Just for your awareness, there were minor tweaks to the budget. What we're doing is we are estimating what our allocations are going to be and what our carryover is going to be from the past year. In the UPWP, you'll see those charts spread throughout dependent on task. James did a really good job of going in, verifying what we've currently used, what we've seen our trends to be in allocations. We did take into account that there are 2 new TMAs, which are larger MPOs in the state of Texas, as well as 1 new MPO altogether that will be that will have their hands in this pot of money. So we were cognizant about that as we were trying to estimate what we are going to be allocated by the federal government through TxDOT as they go through this process. They won't have any official numbers. It doesn't look like until at least October. But we are required to have this into TxDOT by July 31st. So I'll let James speak a little bit more to it. We just want to let everybody know that this, it's going to go back through TxDOT. There may be a couple more revisions needed that are non-material. And of course, we'd share that if we made them. If there are budgetary changes needed, we would do that through an amendment process following the adoption of the UPWP from the board, should it be needed in the future. James?
Thanks, Ryan. I just wanted to touch on the overall budget summary and the differences between what was sent out and what we currently have as of this morning. So on the screen, this is what the final summary, which should be on page towards the end, in section 7 of the UPWP. You'll see the total numbers at the bottom of those third and fourth columns, 1.433, 1,433,416 and 1,408,416. That's what we had in our original draft. What we have as of this morning is $1,315,033 in FY24 and $1,411,458 in FY25. The overall difference is about a decrease of $115,000, and that was to get in line with the total estimate that we have. We were a little bit high in our first round. On that same, I don't have it on the presentation, but the version that was sent out and the copy over there, underneath that budget summary, there's 3 lines that one says combined transportation planning funds, the estimated carryover, and then the total. So that total TPF is transportation planning funds is $2.7 million. That's what we expect to have. That would be the lowest amount. We wouldn't go lower than that, basically. TxDOT has said that we may be underestimating our carryover, and so that amount may increase, and if it does, we will adjust accordingly. But that amount, we feel confident, is the minimum that we would have for our budget for the next 2 years. That's all I had, George. Those are the questions.
That's all.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, discussion? Again, I believe this is an action item that staff is looking for approval on the UPWP that you've been presented.
I move to approve the plan as presented.
We've got a motion to approve the UPWP,
Second the motion.
and there is a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you for that. Item number 8 on the agenda is a discussion item regarding the updates on the K-Tempo work groups. You would seen that in page 48 in your packet, and Urian and James.
So I'm just going to start by saying the bylaws working group met. I've sent out some additional information to the members of the group with some draft revisions. We haven't determined the next date to meet. But following that meeting, hopefully I'll have another update, and then I'll let James update on the other two.
So for the project scoring group, we've met twice. The first time was after the June policy board meeting, and then again after last week's TAC meeting. Staff did present several recommendations at last week's meeting to the working group. Mostly focused on some tweaks and reducing the amount of subjective criteria. There was some combination and a couple criteria that were eliminated. We're hoping that reduces the burden on TAC, who is scoring all of these projects. We're working on getting, the group did agree to all of the proposed changes, and we're working on getting those into a new draft guidelines document, which will be brought for approval along with the revised project application form at the August meetings next month. So you'll see that, and we'll have a summary sheet of the changes that were made. I believe that's all I have for the project scoring work group. The safety work group, we have not met yet. We are targeting hopefully to meet after the August TAC meeting. Staff will be sending out some materials for that in the next week.
Urian and James, thank you. Any comments or questions for Urian or James concerning Killeen-Temple? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 9 on the agenda, which again is a discussion item regarding the updates on the Safe Streets and Roads SS4A for All grant. Urian, share the good news with us.
Thank you, Judge. As you're aware, SICOG, Killeen-Temple NVO, and Coryell County applied for Safe Streets and Roads for All grant funding. We were awarded $1.8 million in federal funding for a total grant of $2.2 million. Staff have sent out an RFP. We got 3 responses to that RFP for activities. Today we received the fully executed contract between SICOG and Federal Highway, so we can actually start working on this grant. Actually, all of the time here, please, if you haven't signed in, please sign in, because this counts as an in-kind match, because we're having this conversation. We will be selecting a consultant to draft and develop the actual comprehensive safety action plan for all the participants, hopefully in the next week or so. Our intent, I'm speaking with Jim, the executive director of the COG, what we're aiming to do is send the RFP responses and the staff scores to the SICOG officers as well as the K-Tempo officers, and have them kind of work together to determine which consultant we should go with. That way, staff are really removed from making that ultimate decision for that RFP response selection. But I'm open for any questions. If you do, from this point on, if you meet internally in your cities, if you have a conversation, please make sure to jot that time down and provide that to staff. Once we have a consultant on board, they will be tracking all the in-kind. But until that point in time, if we could kind of track ourselves, you can send that information to us. We're not asking for anything extravagant. You know, if you mention it at a city council meeting or anything, you know, just, you know, a list of who was there and an agenda showing that it was talked about. Other than that, we're moving forward, and hopefully we hope to have a consultant on board by the beginning of August. Yes, sir.
Ryan, is this matching funds? Is this a 1-for-1, or what's the?
This is 80% federal, 20% local. And for those in Bell County, so we went around asking counties to provide the match. Bell County did already agreed to provide the match in cash up to the 20% for Bell County. I don't recall what that number was. But they did agree with the expectation that our consultant would ensure that we would meet all of our match in kind.
Questions, comments? Ryan, Ryan, if you would share, I believe you kind of reviewed the RFP responses. And that cost allocation, I believe, came in significantly less than the projected grant award. Is that?
That's correct. And so everybody's aware, and as you all may remember, when we submitted this application, I basically took the numbers that DOT provided as guidance and threw them into our application and said, this is what we're going to need, because we had no idea what it was going to cost. In getting the responses back from the consultants, our application was for a total of $2.2 million, which is 1.8 federal. The total of the highest bidder right now is $1.2 million. So I severely overshot that estimate. And there may be some additional needs by the consultant as we work through the contract. But just to let everybody know that those numbers did come in way under what I had estimated.
And I asked you, Ryan, to share that with you because I'm going to reiterate the importance, or what I feel is the importance of, if you are having a meeting, placing this item on that agenda, because all that time will count towards our cost share, for in-kind funds to match that. So that documents it and provides it, and with the understanding that this has come in significantly less than what the projected number was, I think it's beneficial to the region wide that everybody do their little part. And we'll let whatever consultant figure out how to place the cost value on your time at your meetings. But it is very, very, I think it's very, very important that just that item be annotated on there as a discussion item, so we can do our part internally to meet those matching funds.
To help facilitate that, is there some information that we can do, a little workshop to understand what it is, so we can, instead of just talk, actually have like 4 slides and some pictures or something from you guys?
I think we can put something together. I mean,
If you can do that, we can give that to staff and we can set up, just a quick discussion.
No, I think that's, well, I'm committing your mind and change to things I probably shouldn't,
It
but
doesn't need to be complicated, just something, quick summary.
we can put something together.
That'd be great.
Judge,
Yes, yes.
for tracking purposes, is that going to include can it be staff meetings, workshop meetings, and council meetings, or which part do you want? How do you want to track?
Any of those whatsoever. Like I can tell you from Coryell County standpoint, we have that as a standing item on our agenda, knowing that this was leading up to it. So what my intent is we'll take our sign-in sheet from, whoever from the public has signed in, place that with a copy of our minutes and annotate the number of commissioners that were present, and try to glean all of those man hours that we can for the duration of that meeting. So I would encourage any, staff meetings, anything that you can document, all that will help. And I certainly think that this is one of those programs that, even though that match number looks pretty healthy overall, I think it's very doable with just, collective, involvement. That match can be all in kind. Okay, anything else to cover under SS4A? it's a great program. I know that I'm excited about it, that this should be really great for our region. Moving on to item number 10 on the agenda, again, is a discussion item regarding the updates on the possible MPO boundary expansions. And I'll turn that over to you, Ryan.
I don't have any updates on this item, other than I did receive an email from TxDOT this morning asking for some clarifying, some clarification on a couple of questions. I'll get that back. But this will be a standing item, just so I can report if I do have any updates.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, comments? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 12 on the agenda, which is one of my favorites. I'm sorry, on item number 11, which is one of my favorites regarding public input received through June of 2023. James, what have you gleaned from the interweb?
There are a couple new comments. One was regarding a public hearing that the Brownwood District had a few weeks ago for a project that will tag on to the end of the US 190 project. And they're trying to figure out where it was and what it was about. So we assisted them in getting to that public meeting. And then an individual made a comment about concern with narrow bike lanes on 57th Ave in Temple in front of the McKeskas. And we shared that with Jason Deckman and determined that those weren't bike lanes. It was just like the white line that sometimes goes on the side of the road, and it was wider for some reason. He wasn't even sure why it was there, but
you are taking your life into your own hands if you're riding a bicycle. That's on you.
Yeah. Now we know who Anonymous was.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Actually, I know who Anonymous was, and it wasn't him because I've been called on it.
Okay. Anything else on public input?
that's all I had.
Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 11, or I'm sorry, gosh, my eyesight's. Item number 12, member comments. Any comments from the board this morning?
Alibi, what does the exact, what, for the safe streets, send me something so I can get it on our agenda as a standing agenda item.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
I think when they put a little 2 or 3 slide packet together for you,
Okay.
and they'll send some wording in there, recommended addition to what your agendas are.
Just mention it, and I don't know where it goes, but 35, we did all the work and got everything better, and traffic's been worse since we got it better. And I was wondering, what's the plan? Is there a plan? Because I mean, as far as death toll, and that's a significant number of just casualties, people getting hurt, or anyway, it just, I don't know. I just wanted to just throw that out there, and I know that we're planning, and I know that somebody's probably thinking about that, but since we always tend to leave early, I thought I'd at least open something up that we could talk about.
I can talk about 35 a little bit. So, specifically, the segment of 35 that we are having operational issues on is the segment between Belton and Temple, the old segment that hasn't been updated yet. So we do have a consultant on board that is part of the I-14 expansion that we're looking at going east on. We have a consultant. They're just now hitting the ground running. It's going to be handling direction, improving all the intersections, adding the connects at the north end of 363, as well as improving the direct connectors at the south end there in Belton. Timeline for that, we're trying to do what's called a design build project. And we've been talking with, I know we've been meeting with the city of Temple and Bell County as well. They're wanting to get it going as quick as they can. And like I said, we're starting the schematic process. You have to get through schematic right away, utilities. So the earliest we could do something, if it gets funded, and we go the design build route, would probably be 2.5 years from now. So we are pushing it. That is getting a lot of attention in Austin, so that's good.
Yeah, I hear lots of comments, obviously. us living in that area, that's what we see every day. And so people, and they're using bike lanes with their cars. They're driving off the road to, do anything to bypass 35. So, thank you.
So I'm not local to this area. I do drive it occasionally. Just anecdotally, what I see is that segment is where the operational issues are. The segment north and the segment south. To me, it doesn't feel like that, but I guess I'm asking you all that are from the area and the region.
It's both north and southbound from I'll call it the Expo Center, because it started from the Expo Center all the way up to where it widens up to Nugent. I say, but by then it's cleared out. McKesson's 57. By then it's usually, unless you're coming south, sometimes it'll back up to the northeast. If you're coming south, when you have a nice little fender bender.
A lot of it seems to be the interchange there, getting off of I-35 onto I-14, right in that area. That seems to be where the backup begins southbound.
Well, and what's interesting, and it's the same thing, I think, it's similar in Round Rock. It's anytime you have a curve in the road and an entryway, when you have a curve and an entry, everything stops. And people just freak out or right.
Well, they slow down, and that slows everything down. But as a council member that represents the end of Temple District 3, which abuts that, I hear exactly these comments on a constant basis, along with quite a few others about traffic in other places.
We are chasing funding. Like I said, we're just hitting the county. It's great. Like I saw Bob earlier, there will be a lot of coordination with the city of Belton as well, and the MDOs also. But yeah, it's going to start going pretty quick.
Yeah, I would say that most of the public state safety spending in the city of Belton is to support 14 and 35 more than it is to support the city of Belton. Just the amount of time, calls, and we've lost some vehicles, fire truck included, in accidents along there. So it definitely has an impact on the local municipalities.
Victor, one thing that seems to maybe cause some of that congestion is people that are on I-35 southbound, not really realizing how to get onto I-14 and maybe getting earlier warning that they need to move over to the right to get on I-14. So I know that sounds very simple, but I wonder if some
striping and
signage would
on the road.
Right.
Yeah, if you put those on the road going in, because people get confused, right? He's right. People don't know, and they're making and these 18-wheelers making last-minute lane changes over 2 lanes.
Yeah,
that costs a lot of it.
Maybe even just some. I mean, I think I like the signage that's actually sitting in the road, right?
Yeah.
But I think maybe beginning to warn people to begin to move over to the right, maybe just past Loop 363, midway on south, so people can start to move over. Because I have tried to move from the left lane all the way to the right lane before, and it's dangerous. Whatever I've done.
Yeah.
The way I drive.
Coming back from west traveling east, and you gotta choose. When you wanna go south, you still gotta, is that gonna be addressed where you don't have to get off the highway to get back on the highway? I don't know if that's an issue.
Well, I think he said that they're gonna have some.
Yeah, that's
Right, we could look at that. That could be part of the study. I don't know how it's going to fit in there. But that definitely improving that whole intersection where the current I-14 and I-35 tie together, that's something that we're going to be looking at. So.
And how it ties together going north also, coming off I-14.
Yeah. Yes.
That, I would rather put a stick in my eye than get off there.
There's a lane imbalance.
I just hate it.
It's bad on that.
I also drop shaft on that.
Comment over here. Yeah, I like the comment about the marking of the lanes well in advance on the road. So you're driving and you see the big emblem, 35 continues in this far left lane going south. And then you can put the, I-14 with the turn, well back. So that way people have as much, you try as much as you can. You can't help stupid, but you can try to tell people, hey, this is what's going to happen here in the next half mile or so. And it gives everybody a better opportunity to get in the right lane. So that way you don't have people going from the far left all the way over to the right to get over.
and that's done in other places in Texas. Like you see the number, the shield with 14 going to, I think Austin, down in Austin, up in Dallas.
35 thought it was.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you did when I-35 was redone up in that area.
Yes.
Did that. And it helped.
It helped me definitely.
Victor, does this board, would we need to take any action to maybe initiate some type of request to TxDOT to just move the code?
I just took off our traffic engineering, we kind of see. We do have we call it our large green sign contract coming up. It's going to address some of the large green signs, and that might be something we just add some paint on that contract or something. So, well, let me do my work first, and if I need some, you know, help finish, we'll come back to the next work.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you. Good discussion. Any other member comments? Well, non-transportation related, Corio County is celebrating the 125th anniversary of our courthouse on Saturday. So I would extend an invitation to all of you. You're more than welcome to come over and hear a little bit of history on our courthouse. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Saturday. I don't expect you to attend, but I certainly did not want to overlook inviting. So you don't have anything better to do than to come out in 100-degree heat. We'll feed you a little cake, and you can take a little self-guided tour if you would
Only
like to.
100 degrees up there?
You need snow cones.
Just-
Have snow cones, Judge.
We'll work the snow cones, but I'm not sure we can keep the ice cold enough out there, but no. But I did want to extend that invitation to you. Okay. Any other member comments before we wrap up? Hearing none, that brings us to item number 13 on the agenda, and I have 10:19. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
I don't know.